Hi everyone, I'm Cristiano Galvão from the Excel Turbo channel and from the Excel Weekend project. Can you hear me? We are live now with Alan Murray. Alan is in the chat. Alan is here at my side too. It's a pleasure to have you here and we are going to start right now. So let's begin. Thanks for watching and stay there, stay tuned and make the questions in the chat because Alan is here to answer.
Hello and welcome to my presentation here at Excel Weekend 7. My name is Alan Murray and my session is titled Do Not Underestimate the Index Function. It is an honour to have been invited to present at Excel Weekend 7 and an absolute pleasure to do so. Now, just a few quick words about me for those that are meeting for the first time. So my name is Alan, I live in Ipswich in the UK and I'm a father of two wonderful children. I'm an Excel and Power BI trainer and I've done that now for over 20 years. I also run the Computergaga blog and the YouTube channel, which were both set up around the 2009 to 2011 time. So they've been in operation for quite a while and my YouTube channel has over 550 videos now, so it is packed full of content. I'm also the author of the Advanced Excel Success book, published by A-Press in 2020, which guides users through the next step in their Excel development. I was awarded Microsoft MVP in 2020 as well, the same year as Cristiano. I am the organiser of the London Excel Meetup, a monthly free meetup in London and online, where we have presentations and the sharing of Excel knowledge and fun. Feel free to check us out at meetup.com and hopefully I'll see you at a future event there. And finally, feel free to catch up with me on LinkedIn. I'm there. There's quite a few Alan Murrays, so maybe throw Computergaga into your search and that will narrow it down to me. Now, what is this session about? Well, obviously it's about the index function and to showcase its power. Now, I've always found index possibly the best function in Excel, or it's certainly up there. It's extremely flexible and extremely powerful. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to do this presentation is because normally when people learn or hear about the index function, they hear about index and match. And that's what you hear, index match. But that's two functions. People talk about it as if it's a function, but it's two. And really the major player in that combo is index. Now, they are a wonderful combination and it was improved further when Xmatch came out last year. And now we have an even better version of the already brilliant combination. But in this presentation, what I want to do is actually step away from that and focus on index. And I don't really want to do any or many examples where match gets involved. Now, why should we be so interested in index when we have functions like filter and XLOOKUP and offset? Why should we focus on index? Well, one of the big strengths when you compare it to the likes of filter and XLOOKUP is the fact that it's brilliant for relative work and not just absolute. So functions like XLOOKUP, filter, SUMIFs, COUNTIFs, they work on the absolute. You select the column header. Now that's great. People love that because it's easier than typing index numbers of columns like VLOOKUP and sort and index kind of prompt file. However, that weakens them when you want to work relatively because you don't always want to work with the exact name of a column. So index is brilliant for that. We'll also see an example of how great it is with the dynamic array functions. These functions that make it so easy now to return an array, and we can have index work on that array. So it's brilliant for that. It's fantastic with sequence, one of the new dynamic array functions that produces a series of values. Now index loves that. And finally, index has always been great for returning a range. And looking beyond the index match, the classic use of index, possibly the second most common use of it is creating dynamic named ranges. So anybody who's done that knows that index can return a range. And it does it that little bit better than offset. So they are some of the key reasons why you shouldn't underestimate index, and it's actually even better nowadays than it ever was. So even though we have these new power functions, index is still the cream of the crop in my eyes. And it's just getting even better with these new functions and with this new array engine. So we only have a short amount of time, so let's close down this PowerPoint and let's dive into Excel. Now let's just have a quick start on some of the basics of index, just to build a foundation for anyone who may be new or rusty. So what I've got here in columns B to D is just a range of values, and in cell F3 I'm going to use index in its classic use of returning a value. So if I start index in that cell, as you begin you can see there's actually two ways of using this function. Now using the first list of arguments, which is how most people use it, I'm going to begin by providing the array as the entire columns B to D. And I'm doing that because that's a reasonably common behaviour by Excel users. Now those who've used index before know that probably wasn't a great idea to begin with. But if I move on from that, it prompts me for a row number to use, and I'm just going to type some values in this starting example. So if I type 3, put in a comma, I have the option for providing a column number. It is optional, we don't have to do this. But let's go ahead and put 2, and we'll run this index function, and that returns the value of Jeff. Now why did it return Jeff? Let's return back to the formula. It's looking at the entire columns B to D. So 3 rows down is that third row, which is Jeff's row. And then the second column in is column C, because we gave index the array of B to D. So it doesn't start in A, it starts in B, therefore the second column is C. So just bear in mind, like all lookup functions, the index is not using the sheet when you provide these numbers. So although the arguments say row num, column num, which can confuse some when they're beginning with the formula, it's referring to the row and column of the array, not the sheet. Now really, instead of the entire columns, we should select the range more accurately. For all of the examples in this presentation after this, we will be running off tables, because I am a massive fan of tables. Tables and arrays are the way forward, apart from your single input cells. So this will be the last time you see a range. I'm just using it in this beginning example. But if I select the table data, let's call it accurately, and then run this same one of third row, second column, I now have Heather, which is possibly what we wanted from that first example. Because really Heather is the third row. She's not the third row of the sheet, but she is the third row of data here. And yes, the name is the second column. Now I just want to shift those two cells over for one moment and just quickly create another cell for the name. Just chose the wrong option there. And let's go with Heather, as we're speaking about Heather. And I just want to do a quick index match example. I know I spoke about not using it, but just understanding index for a moment. If I provide the array to return as the array of values, And if I use match to find Heather's row, so look up row is Heather, that name in F3, select the range, comma 0 and close this off. Now I went through that quick, so if you are new to index match, that's probably a bit much at the moment, but I'm making some assumptions of some experience here. You can always watch this back. But running this will do what we want it to do. It will return 322 for Heather. But the other thing I just wanted to stress at this point, before we proceed with other examples, is that when using index, we also need to be careful that these arrays match. So because this first one, the return array, is D3 to D7, I need to be sure that the lookup array used by match is also C3 to C7. If I was to shift this first array just a little bit out and run that, then now I'm not getting the right answer. I'm getting 583, which is Claire, and that was just a mistake maybe when I was creating it of selecting the wrong range. They need to be aligned. Okay, let's remove that and let's move on to the first example that I was leading to in my presentation, and it's on working relatively. So as I mentioned, this is something that functions like SUMIFS, filter, XLOOKUP, they're not really great for. Index is perfect for this. Now what somebody's asking for is they want to sum all of the values for the current week. And we have this table here with the 4 weeks, and this table is named week sales. Now currently the week is week 4, but there will be new columns added to this table every week. And this report will sum that week's values. So we can't just select week 4 or select G, because that will change. Now index makes this super simple. In cell C2, I'll start my index function and I will provide the array as week sales, which is the name of that table, and you can see it selected below. A comma brings me on to the row number. Now I don't want a specific row in this example because I want to sum all of the values. So I'm actually going to skip that question. If I put a comma, I'll just ignore that question. A lot of people don't realise that you can do that. Now for the column number, I want the last column. So I'm going to use a function called columns and just simply ask it to tell me how many columns are in the week sales table. So I'll bring that in, close off columns, close off index, and what this will do is return all of the values. It's going to use that array, because I'm using 365 here with that array engine, of the current week. So when I press enter, I actually get this spill error because this table's in the way. So if I just select that for one moment and just drag it down so it doesn't interfere with the spill, and there we have it. That's actually all of the values from week 4. And if I did go and add a 5th week in here, you can see that it's changing. So it automatically updates with the current week. It is able to work in a relative manner. Last week, this week, 3 weeks ago. It can work relatively. Now let me just undo that 5th week. I don't want that in there. And let me drag this table back up to where it was. Not that it's doing anything wrong there. Creating my spill again. And our goal was to sum the values. So all I need to do here is just wrap a sum around index. Now please bear in mind that not only do we have the power of working relatively here, where things like SUMIFS or even sum require you just to click on a column, but please bear in mind that you can use any function at this point. So although I'm using sum, it could easily be average or median or any other kind of aggregation function, or any function really that you want to use on that returned array. And that is cool. Pressing enter gives me the sum. So that is an example of index working in a relative manner. So for the next example, we want to see index working with an array. That was one of the other key benefits that I outlined in that slideshow. So in this example, I want to return the top n values. So what we have is we have a sheet at the bottom named data. And on this sheet, we have some names. We have a team, and there are 3 teams there, blue, green, and yellow. And then we have these sales figures. And I just simply want to know the top n names and values. So maybe the top 5, top 10, top 3, whatever the user specifies. And coming back to that sheet, the user can specify this in cell C2. Currently we have 5 there. So jumping into it, I'm actually going to begin in cell D6 and do the sales first. And I'm going to use a sort function. To begin with, I just want to sort the values. So I'm going to sort the array. Now that table that I just showed on the data sheet is called a sales team. So if I choose sales team, and I'll open up the columns and say I want the sales column. So that's what I'm sorting. At comma, what's the index column? I don't need to answer that. I've only provided that one column. I'll move on and the order will be descending. So all I'm doing at the moment, if I run this, is just ordering those values from largest to smallest, which is great. And similar to the previous example, I've got this huge array that spills out. Now we only want the number of values specified by cell C2. So if I just come back into that formula and index comes into the party, the array is the array that sort is returning. So it works fantastic with these dynamic arrays. Now on the end though, when I put in a comma and it asks you, okay, what row? Now I don't want one row, I want a whole sequence of rows. So I'm going to use sequence. And the number of rows I want is specified by C2, close sequence, close index. And as easy as that, just wrapping index around, throwing a little sequence function in there to specify how many rows, we have shortened that to the top whatever. And if I change C2 to 10, or indeed change it to 3, you can see that the number of values there is changing. By the way, I have a sequence function in that rank column 2. That is why that was also changing. Now for the name, it's going to be very similar. So let's pick up the speed here. It will be a sort by function because I want to return the names of the people. But the array to sort by is going to be the values, just like last time. Those sales values. The order will be descending. So that will return all of the names in the correct order. So Mike relates to the 2423, T-Rex to the 2001. But then just like before, let's bring index around that. Sequence at the end to link back to that input cell. And we have ourselves a top 5 or a top 10 or a top whatever list. So there are many different approaches to doing that. Some of you may have done these top n lists before. Index with the dynamic arrays is an option, but really that was just another demonstration of how neatly index works in conjunction with the arrays. And there's so much potential here. It doesn't have to be sort or sort by that gets used with it like this demo. For the final example, I wanted to demonstrate the index function returning a range. So here we have these periods and these cells, and in cell E3 I have an input cell for how many periods. and we want to return like that many periods of sales. It's the last 6 or the last 4, etc. So let me just type something inside a sheet to begin with, because our goal is to create a rolling chart to chart the last 6 or the last 4, whatever periods. So I'm going to type the formula into the sheet, then copy that into a name, because we can't use dynamic arrays directly in charts, and use the name in the chart. So index function, let's demonstrate it on the sheet first. The array is going to be the period column. Let's begin with that. The number of rows, I'm going to use a rows function, similar to the columns function we saw previously. And I'll just feed that the table periodic sales, which is that table on the left. Close bracket on that, subtract the input cell in E3, and then +1, because I don't want to go back 6 if there's 6 periods, I want to go back 5 rows. I can then close bracket on that. And I'll put in this range operator. So by entering the range operator, we can create ranges with index. It's a fantastic weapon that it has and that we can utilize. Now I'm just going to take a copy of index to try and save some time here. So let me paste that in, and I'll take the bit off the end where it references the move that number of periods back. And something that we don't need to do, but maybe for simplicity of reading, I can knock that down to the next row so we can see the 2 parts of that range. And if I press enter, it returns the last 6 periods. And indeed, if I change the input cell to 4 or to 2 or indeed to 8, you can see it's reacting. Absolutely brilliant. We can return that to a sheet. We can return it to another formula to work with. But our goal is to ultimately get this into a chart. Now, if I just copy that formula for one moment and put it into the column next door and just change those 2 column references to the sales column, and that's all we'll need to change there. Absolutely brilliant. Now it's just occurred to me that I need to make the reference to E3 in both of these formulas absolute for when we name that. So let me do that quickly. Okay, now we need to name those 2 formulas and then use that name in the chart. So going to the first one, let's take a copy, let's define name. I love the option to name formulas and name ranges. So absolutely powerful and meaningful. Chart labels, and I'll just paste that into the refers to area. Now we can name this whatever we want, as long as we follow the rules, that is. Let me copy the next formula, define a name, let's call it chart values. We have this brilliant resizable name box as well nowadays. Simple yet so necessary improvement. Let's click OK. And now I'm just going to select a sample range and create a chart. Let's go for a line chart. And I'm not going to work on improving this chart. You know, that's not really what we're here for. But with it selected, I need to select data and get it to use and name formulas. So I selected that range as a sample. I never wanted that range. So I'm going to edit the legend, maybe call it sales if they want a name. But for the range, I need to keep the sheet name in there. Got to keep those sheet names. But let's call it chart labels. Oh, sorry, this is the series. So chart values, this will be. And then for the labels, that will be range chart labels. Keep that sheet name, remember. Click OK, let's confirm this. And here we have a chart with the last 8 periods. But if I change it to 5 periods, 2 periods, looks silly, 10 periods. So whether you're trying to create some kind of rolling chart and you always want, you know, the last 6, last 4, And we've created this input cell just to take that a bit further, letting the person specify as well. Obviously, if new data is added to this table, it will all update due to the table, due to our arrays, due to index. This concludes my presentation for this brilliant Excel weekend event. Thank you for your time, and hopefully you and others will no longer underestimate the index function.
Hey, let's look for one question, a couple of questions.
You got time, Cristiano?
People are amazed. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alan, because they are engaging a lot on the comments. So people can send the question now. Alan's here to answer you. We have a comment here from Wellington. How do we underestimate a function like this? It's in Portuguese.
Yeah, I don't know. It just happens. I think, like I said at the start of the presentation, the way it gets kind of combined with match every time it's spoken about, I think has done it an injustice for many years.
Yeah, injustice. Yeah, it's a good word to describe this. Yes. Questions. They are giving so many greetings and positive words. They are all thankful, and it's great. We have Marcos saying perfect presentation. Romeo saying brutal. Virginia, thank you, Alan. Basilio from Brazil too, great presentation. Laurus from Brazil, thanks, Computergaga. By the way, people, guys, of course, do make the like under the video, but also find Computergaga for those who don't know, because we are in different countries, so sometimes they don't know. Find Computergaga. He does an amazing work on Twitter too. You know what? In Brazil, we started left Twitter a little, but we have to go there too. Check Computergaga on Twitter. Oh, I have a question here to finish. Bruno Machado, if I do that with dynamic table, will work?
I'm not sure what Bruno means.
It's probably the table with dynamic arrays, probably the question.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're referencing a kind of spilled range. We'll need that hash. I don't think I demonstrated that at any point in the presentation, did I? I don't think. But if we're referencing a spilled area, we'll need the kind of hash, the kind of pound sign. But yeah, index can work with that, no problem. It's just whether you feed it a range on a sheet or a virtual table, like an array, it's fine.
Fernando thinks maybe he means pivot table, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the pivot table will just be treated as a worksheet range. So kind of
okay.
Yes.
People can write in the comments later, not in the chat, the comments, because we have so many talks ahead, and then we have people watching on the recording too. So feel free, everyone, to write the questions in the comments of the video too when the chat is finished. And then Alan may come back here to see some of them. Okay, especially during the first week. So thank you, Alan. Thanks, everyone. And let's go to the other video that is on the description now. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.